Good morning, American government. Tuesday, April the 28th. You are so close, so close. Press on, man. Just press on. Let's just get to the finish line. Hey, listen, today we're going to be talking about the freedom of the press, and that's probably where we're going to land the rest of our time together. So, as a backdrop, when we talk about the freedom of the press is sort of a morph of the freedom of speech. And this freedom of speech sort of morphed into, over time, the freedom of the press. Then what you need to have in the back of your mind is these founding fathers, when they wrote this thing down, the freedom of the press, all they were dealing with at the time was newspapers, some books, some pamphlets, possibly. They had no idea about radio. They had no idea about television. They had no idea about the internet. And so what has happened is, as those things have evolved, the right of the press to gather and publish information, it's conflicted with other important rights of individuals. And as a result of that, the courts are deciding this. And just like we've looked at so many other freedoms that we have, is the court gets involved in these things time and time and time again. And their rulings, while we hope they are somewhat consistent, and for the most part they are, until there's a shift in the culture, and then they'll overturn. And so then we have a new playing field. So the court's deciding what the rules are in terms of the press. All you need to do is turn on the nightly news. And actually, we're going to do that in the latter part of this week. And we're going to compare and contrast. But if you'll just watch the news, you have to be amazed when you hear this story, and you hear how it's the spin on it, and how it's delivered, and what it infers, and then you switch over to another station, same story, you wouldn't even know you're listening to the same story. The spin on it is totally different. And so the public, we need to be concerned, we need to be careful, we need to discern what is the right information, what's not so right, what's wrong. It's this thing of fictional facts and factual fiction, and it's dominated, the airwaves are dominated by it. Again, we're having the election of 2020, right? It's coming up here soon. Lots of people are going to decide their vote on some 30-second marketing spin in the fall. It's hard to believe, but that's what's going to happen. So what we need to do is we need to be concerned about, when we start talking about the freedom of the press, and again, that's not just the newspapers, right? That's the internet, that's the television, that's the radio, all these things that we see today in 2020. And because it's got lots of arms and legs, we have the thing called the FCC, which is the Federal Communication Commission, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to monitor radio and television, and now we get into podcasts and all these YouTube videos that we have right now, the ones that you're listening to. They're trying to monitor this thing, and what they're trying to do is, because the government's involved in making sure, because this is going over public airways. And so the FCC they're in there trying to censor programs that may be totally misleading, may be false, maybe arouse, some kind of chaos in the country. And so the government is constantly, with the FCC, looking at this thing. And then we have court ruling after court ruling, and you're going to look at some of these in the book. They go all the way to the Supreme Court, and that's sort of dictates the law of the land right now in terms of freedom of the press. So that's where we're going to land. So as we start talking about the freedom of press, we're going to introduce some terms: prior restraint. And that's where the government can step in, and there can be some type of censorship on the information before it's even published. And on the one hand, we go, well, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Well, I guess it depends. A term called a gag order. This is where a judge prohibits the press from publishing certain types of information about a case. Because if it gets out in the newspapers, it gets on the 6 o'clock news, it gets on, around town, then potentially there could be a conflict with this individual, right, getting a fair trial. And that's one of his freedoms, right? He's guaranteed a fair trial. And so the judge has to get involved and start, holding back the press and won't let him do that, and won't let him say this and won't let him say that. And so we hear that as a gag order. We see in the court system sometimes with juries, they have to sequester them, which they take them and they put them up in a hotel room and they turn off the TV so they don't have access to any information from the press that would taint, right, their decision about a pending case. So we have a thing called shield laws. This is where reporters, they're not totally protected, but they're somewhat protected about disclosing their sources. Turn on the nightly news. Some broadcasting company will announce something and say sources close to, undisclosed source. And on one hand, there's some protection about people, coming forward with some information and things like that, whistleblowers. But then on the other hand is, if we don't hold the press liable to make sure they're not just making this stuff up, they can say anything they want and say, according to my undisclosed source, blah, 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 blah. And it can be totally false. And they could have just made it up. And the shield laws somewhat protects that. But that's not so straightforward as well. So while these shield laws do protect some the reporters to a certain extent, it's right. We've got to be cautious and concerned about protecting it to the point where no one's liable. A news broadcast can say anything they want. This news company, CNN, can say anything they want. Fox News can say anything they want, right? According to my undisclosed source. So you can see where this thing sort of gets messy. And so what we're trying to do, and what the government's trying to do, and what these court cases are trying to do, is they're trying to balance this idea of freedom of the press and the rights that brings to the general public, and balance the right to you and I as individuals. And it's an ongoing battle. And it takes place constantly in the courtrooms across this country, year in, year out. So that sort of lays the groundwork. So what I need you to do is I need you to, in your book, read page 371, 374. It's a quick read. And again, it's about the freedom of the press, and it's going to talk about a couple of the Supreme Court cases and how things have developed over time. But it's fluid. It's constantly changing. So you read those 4 pages for me. I attached on this Canvas account discussion questions 13.4. You're just going to define a couple things, answer a couple questions, submit that to me. We'll give you 48 hours. Submit that to me by Wednesday the 29th. And I need you to watch two short videos, obviously this one, and then there's one below as well about freedom of the press, and that'll sort of give you the foundation as we move forward. Just to give you a heads up, what we're thinking as the week goes on, we will probably have 2 more quizzes. One of the quizzes will be, I'm going to just give you a topic in a page or 2 at most, probably a page. Just compare and contrast some media issues, and we'll get to that at the latter part of the week. And then one other quiz we'll have. It looks like it may be Wednesday or Thursday, but I'll keep you posted on that one. Just about the freedom of the press, just to make sure we have a foundation. We have the foundation as we talk about the freedom of the press. So that's really what's going on this week. I hope you had a great Monday. You're hanging in there. It's Tuesday already. A week from tomorrow, it is over for you, and I'm thrilled and delighted for you. Just a couple quick things. Please go into RenWeb /facts, and any work that you're missing, this is the time to do it. We're running out of time, so I need you. If you're missing some work, you want to replace some of those zeros with a number, this is the time to do it. So if you need me, you know where I am. I'm just an email away. Just email me and I'll get right back to you, and we'll address anything that we need to address with you. So I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful Monday. Have a great day today, and we'll talk soon.